Hello. Are we live?
We are.
Are we alive?
Well, no, all good. Yeah.
All good. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Writers to Watch. It's been a minute. We took the summer off, and we're glad to be back. I'm Virginia Stanley, Director of Library Marketing at HarperCollins.
I'm Lainey Mays, Library Marketing Associate at HarperCollins as well.
So this is fun. This is going to be a great conversation tonight. We typically host 4 authors of 4 books. Tonight we're doing 3 books that are co-authored. And so we have lots to discuss, really interesting and wonderful novels. We have historical fiction, we have fiction, we have a Christmas book. There is so much to unpack. Get it? Unpack, Lainey? For the Christmas book. Before we bring our first team of writers on, Lainey, is there anything that you want to say to everyone who's watching?
No, just that I'm really excited to be here and hear from all of you. So get your questions ready because you can ask questions and we will read them out. So be thinking.
So we'll bring on team number 1. They'll talk about their book for a bit and then they will turn their cameras off. We'll do the same with the second team and then we'll do the same with the third. And after the third team is done speaking about their book, we'll bring everybody back on and then, excuse me, the questions are yours to ask. And of course, we want to know about the content of these books. As I said, they're 3 very different books, very compelling and page turning. So get ready. But we also are going to ask the authors to talk a little bit about their process. So everybody's got a different way and can't even imagine how these authors have managed to do this, especially in these times. So without further ado, I think we're going to get started. So Lainey, do you want to introduce the first team?
Sure. If I could have Janie Chang and Kate Quinn come on down or come on up on screen, whatever you want to say. And hi. Okay, so let's get our beautiful book jacket up. I love that. Welcome to both of you. I'm so excited to be introducing you. So first up, we have the Phoenix Crown. We have Kate Quinn, the New York Times and USA Today bestselling author of historical fiction, a native of Southern California. She attended Boston University, where she earned bachelor's and master's degrees in classical voice. I think that might come up in a little bit when we talk about this book. A lifelong history buff, she has written 4 novels in the Empress Rome saga and 2 books set in the Italian Renaissance before turning to the 20th century with The Alice Network, The Huntress, The Rose Code, and The Diamond Eye. And all have been translated into multiple languages. And she and her husband now live in California with 3 black rescue dogs, which we're kind of hoping make an appearance, I have to say. I think they did one time in the past. And then welcoming Janie Chang, born in Taiwan. Janie has lived in the Philippines, Iran, Thailand, New Zealand, and Canada. She writes historical fiction, often drawing from family history and ancestral stories. She has a degree in computer science and is a graduate of the Writer's Studio program at Simon Fraser University. And she's the author of 3 Souls, Dragon Springs Road, and The Library of Legends, and The Porcelain Moon. And she currently lives with her husband in the beautiful Sunshine Coast of British Columbia, Canada. So welcome to both of you. And I can't wait to hear more about the Phoenix Crown. So I'll hand it to you.
Well, I don't mind kicking us off a little bit just to start and see, give you guys an example of what exactly this book is about. It's a bit of a departure for both of us, and we are thrilled about that. It is what happens essentially when 2 very different women, a resourceful Chinatown seamstress with a lot of talent and a lot of desperation, and a struggling New York City opera singer looking to restart her career, bump into each other when they are thrown together in turn of the century San Francisco. They are first drawn together by chance, then they're drawn together by mutual acquaintances, including one extremely mysterious millionaire offering them both patronage to help them achieve their dreams. And then they are finally thrown together in the chaos and bloodshed and fire and storm of the 1906 San Francisco earthquake. So that's the Phoenix Crown in a nutshell. But what it really is a story of two women who could not be more different and how their lives are changed by each other. So Janie, why don't you tell me about your heroine, or tell them about your heroine?
Very different is right. My character, Su Ling, the character that I'm writing the point of view for, she's been running her family's Chinatown laundromat ever since her parents died. But now her uncle is trying to marry her off to a much, much older man. But Su Ling wants none of this. She's been planning to run away with Reggie, the love of her life, even though Reggie is not Chinese. And this is a big problem in a time and place where mixed race relationships are really frowned upon. Even Madame Ning, owner of the most expensive brothel in Chinatown, who was her mother's closest friend, is not encouraging this relationship. But now running away with Reggie is kind of pointless because Reggie has vanished without a trace, without a word. So now Su Ling needs to change her plans and run away from this unwanted marriage. And in order to do this, she needs to make a lot more money. And that is when her path crosses that of Gemma Garland, Kate's character.
Gemma Garland is a character I wanted to write for a long time. You may have heard in my bio that I have achieved a master's in the classic degree and a bachelor's degree in classical voice. I trained as an opera singer, and then, I ended up a historical fiction author instead. So I have always thought, why not write about opera singers, or at least write some book someday about an opera singer? And that is this book. And I am so thrilled about that. And my student loans came out of the corner and said, yes, finally, at last, we are no longer useless. So I had a lot of fun writing Gemma, who is a down on her luck opera singer who originally got her start as a Nebraska farm girl in the world's smallest town, where there's really populated by nothing much more than cows and church choirs. And that is ironically exactly how my own opera professor at school got her start. She grew up in Willa Cather country and ended up a world famous opera singer singing Queen of the Night or all over the stages of Europe. So I based Gemma a little bit on her. And Gemma herself, though, is having a hard time. She's recently suffered some professional setbacks for no fault of her own. She is in the chorus of the New York Metropolitan Opera, which is on the road currently. And she's coming to San Francisco so that she can join the traveling opera company and be part of their performances when they open in San Francisco in April, with a performance of Carmen, which is headlining none other than the famous Caruso. Gemma would like to get out of the chorus. She'd like to be a star, and she really knows that this is her last shot. So she's determined to make her way. She's determined to let nothing stop her on her rise to the top. She's trying to be a tougher, more self-sufficient version of herself. She's one of those ladies who's always a little too nice for her own good. And she's decided this is it. This is where she gets to be a star. And she does not need an earthquake interrupting her plans. Who of us do? But an earthquake is going to interrupt her plans. And so it's a very unexpected link with a certain Chinese seamstress who she is going to get to know in the course of the chaos. So I am very much looking forward to introducing Gemma and Su Ling together to you, both of you, to all of you, because both of these ladies it was in the writing of their story, it was about women who really wouldn't have been friends in the ordinary course of life, but life does take some extraordinary turns and their lives are forever changed by each other.
And as it turns out, the themes that we were working through just sort of converge very strongly on female friendships, because what Gemma and Su Ling have in common is lack of agency in a time and place where women don't really get to call the shots, and yet they are determined to do something to take control of their lives. And they make sacrifices, they make compromises, but eventually they land in some adventures that make them decide who they really are and what they're willing to do to save the ones they love and to save themselves.
And that really is something that runs through both Janie's work and mine, even before we decided to get together to write this book. We are both fascinated by the ways in which women in history carve out these little spheres of influence and power and independence for themselves when they live in times and places that do not want them to have it. And yet, throughout history, women still try to find these spheres or to make them, if that's all they can do. And that's very much what our two ladies of the Phoenix Crown do. It's very much what Janie and I write about in more books than just this one, and certainly when we're writing alone as well as together. So really, we can't wait for you to read the Phoenix Crown.
Fantastic. And I love what you were saying about the women's stories. You brought us two very fierce female stories, but definitely what you're saying about like history coming together and people who might not be friends, because I'm so intrigued by those stories. And Virginia, if you'll allow me a quote, Marie Benedict said, "Brilliant authors Kate Quinn and Janie Chang weave these threads together into seamless page-turning masterpiece of history and suspense, shot through with women rising up from the margins of society to claim their own singular futures. I could not put this triumphant novel down." Thank you.
Great quote. Thank you so much, Kate and Janie. And now I will ask Catherine Wigginton Greene and Christine Platt to turn their cameras and microphones on to talk about their book, Living for Not Becky.
Hi, everyone. I am Christine Platt, co-author with my dear friend, Catherine Wigginton Greene of Rebecca, Not Becky. I'm trying to think what's the best way to describe this book. I mean, I think there's so many similarities between what was just shared. And there's something that is very powerful about exploring what can be, what's the word? Almost like what can be discovered about just the depths of sisterhood and motherhood through the telling of these sorts of narratives. And so Rebecca, Not Becky, of course, as everyone knows, explores racial tensions, which Catherine and I will talk about a bit more. But I think it's also important to note that we also explore, again, just that depth of sisterhood, of motherhood, of womanhood. I think that's a very powerful part of the narrative. I write from the perspective of DeAndrea Whitman, who is a Black woman who relocates from this beautiful Black oasis known as Atlanta, Georgia, to a whiter than white Rolling Hills, which is a fictional community in Virginia. And when she gets there, she is hit with more than culture shock. It's an upper crust community. It has the best of everything. And one of the things that it has is a state-of-the-art dementia facility, which is where her mother-in-law resides. And that's the reason they ultimately moved to Rolling Hills. And again, when showing those just complexities and dynamics of womanhood and motherhood and parenting, Catherine and I wanted to make sure that we didn't leave out all of these other responsibilities that women have, given the age of our characters. They would be, caring or even beginning to care for aging parents. And so definitely wanted to make that a strong part of the narrative so that readers can see just the extra weighted burden that women are carrying, right? Like trying to carry around all these things. I'm trying not to quote the Barbie movie, but I just think it was done so masterfully well. Again, just showing the complexities of women's lives. So anyway, DeAndrea is in Rolling Hills. She's missing her friends. She is beside herself, mainly because Rolling Hills has the best of everything except for Black folks. So she is like, where are the Black folks? And after lamenting to her therapist week after week, her therapist challenges her to make a white friend. And DeAndrea, she's struggling with her therapist orders. However, her 5-year-old daughter Nina is not having the same challenge, and she ends up making a bestie the first day of school, Isabella Myland. And Isabella and Nina, they are buddies, fast friends. There is no way around it. DeAndrea is going to have to get to know Isabella's mother, Becky Myland. And it doesn't take long for her to realize that Becky is a bit much. So, Catherine, enter Rebecca Myland.
Right. And speaking of women who might not otherwise be friends, that's certainly the situation with Rebecca and DeAndrea, though Rebecca wants nothing more than to be friends with DeAndrea. And so through Rebecca's story and her near obsession with being a really good white person, an ally, one of the good white people, not a Becky. She is aware of her privilege. She's uncomfortable with her privilege, yet here she is living in this very wealthy suburb with her children in a very expensive private school. And she's grappling with all that and still wants to be a good person. And she has started the parent diversity committee at the school. She leads the multicultural festival. She does all the things that she has learned on social media about what to do. And so through her story and her obsession with DeAndrea and really seeing DeAndrea only as a Black woman, not as a woman with whom she actually has a lot in common and who is also sad and struggling and also really funny. At first, it's just, oh, here's someone who can fulfill my need to have diversity in my world. And so we get to explore some of the absurdity that happens in these situations where we become very obsessed with the performance of allyship and being a good person, being a good white person. And when there's a cause that there's a statue that's going to come down in town, and Rebecca thinks this is our chance to really, show who we are, and things don't quite go.
They don't go as planned.
They don't go as planned. And we also get to explore the women's relationships with the men in their lives. So there's a lot of that as well.
Their girlfriends.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think that, really one of the things that we wanted to explore, right, is understanding that in addition to, all of these things that folks have going on, all of their many weighted responsibilities and obligations, right, there is this also weighted responsibility that has become very visible in America, which is this responsibility with how to address, manage, have conversations about race and racism, right? And so we wanted to really show how that looks in real life, and how complex it is. There are layers of complexities when it comes to race and racism, and what happens when folks are forced and challenged to come together in what they think is a common cause, right? What does that look like? How can we sort of foster a deeper understanding of each other's struggles? And I think one of the things that Catherine and I we didn't want this novel to be like super preachy or teachy, but we are anti-bias, anti-racist educators, and that is how we met. And that work is very important to us. And so sometimes fiction is a lot easier to teach truth than nonfiction. And so we really wanted to show folks what it looks like when we say, do the work, right? There's all these like little buzzwords and phrases that are thrown out. And, that work is messy. That work is complicated. That work is funny at times. That work is sad at times, right? But really the work is, learning all the truths about ourselves to help us better understand ourselves. And then also to help us better understand being in relation to others. And so that is what we, really aim to achieve with this novel, Rebecca, Not Becky.
Well, I have to say that I absolutely love this book, and there are so many. First of all, I'm going to go back and read your intros because yes, your backgrounds are are so full and fleshed out, and they need to be, everyone needs to know what you all have done that has brought you to this point. And I'll read your bios in a second, but I just have to say that I felt that neither was it preachy. I didn't feel that at all. I found it, I loved the characters in the book. I loved their husbands. I loved all the stuff that they were struggling with. The triggers for them when they were children revealed so much. But I also thought that there was great humor in this book. It's not all heavy, but boy, is it a great way to present this situation. And I can't wait to dive into the book more and hear people's questions about it. Everybody's got to read this book because it's just, it's really great. It's such a great read, and and oh my God, and their friends are so funny. Anyway, you go on. It's a funny book, but there's so much in it. And elder care, honestly, do yourselves a favor, you've got to read this book. There's so much in it. But let me read a quick quote, and then we'll go to the next team. And this is from New York Times bestselling author Jacqueline Woodson, who calls Rebecca Not Becky a deep exhale of a narrative. Rebecca Not Becky kept me laughing and thinking. This is a reminder that talking about race doesn't have to be hard. It simply requires us to be honest. And so I love that quote. It sort of wraps it up for me, and the characters in the book, and Rebecca's she's trying awfully hard.
Bless her heart.
Bless her heart. So let me a quick bio, and then we'll move on, and then we'll come back. So Christine Platt writes literature for children and adults that centers African diasporic experiences, past, present, and future. She holds a BA in Africana Studies from the University of South Florida, MA in Africa and African American Studies from the Ohio State University, and a JD from Stetson University College of Law. Catherine Wigginton Greene is a writer, producer, and filmmaker dedicated to strengthening human connection, a graduate of Cole College and Columbia University's Graduate School of Journalism. Catherine is currently pursuing her doctorate from the George Washington University's Graduate School of Education and Human Development with a focus on difficult dialogue. Platt and Wigginton Greene both live in Washington, D.C. and are mothers and friends in real life. So thank you both for talking about the book. And we'll go on to the next team, and then we'll bring everybody back and open this up to everybody's questions. Thanks so much.
Okay. Oh, already on camera. Thank you. So I want to welcome Julie Murphy and Sierra Simone. We're going to talk about the next book in the Christmas Match series. This is A Holly Jolly Ever After. And I just have to say that Tessa Bailey, who we love, said the audacity of this magical author duo to sneak in and steal Christmas in the sexiest way possible. The charming holiday romp you absolutely need in your life. And I love that quote so much. But I just got a starred review at Library Journal. And I can't wait to hear more about your writing process in the book. But first, I'm going to introduce you. So Julie Murphy is the author of the middle grade novels Dear Sweet Pea and Camp Sylvania, as well as the young adult novels Ramona Blue, Side Effects May Vary, and the Faith series Pumpkin, Puddin' and Dumplin', which is now a Netflix original film. And Sierra Simone is the USA Today and Wall Street Journal bestselling former librarian. Can we all get a round of claps? Her notable works include Priest, American Queen, and Misadventures of a Curvy Girl, and her books have been featured in Marie Claire, Cosmopolitan, Entertainment Weekly, and BuzzFeed. And she lives with her spouse and family in Kansas City. So welcome. Thank you for joining us. I'm going to hand it off to you.
Hi. Okay, so the story of A Holly Jolly Ever After really starts with our heroine, Winnie Baker, who is a wholesome child star turned sort of tentpole actress in like wholesome entertainment and media and family-based media. And she has a little bit of a scandal at a music festival, not unlike the one that was just in the news this week for being flooded. And she has a very messy divorce that becomes very public. And in her sphere of sort of like wholesome entertainment, like divorces are not done. And basically her career and her brand are in tatters. And so she decides that she is just going to reinvent herself in the wildest way possible by starring in a spicy made-for-TV Christmas movie that is a spicy Santa Claus origin story. And she's all in, she's ready to reinvent herself. But because Winnie has come out of purity culture, she finds herself like, floundering a little bit on set while she's supposed to be filming these saucy love scenes. And it's because she's never had good love scenes in real life. And that is where her co-star, Callum Lieberman, enters. Julie, do you want to tell us a little bit about Callum?
Yeah, I can't believe people let us write these books, by the way. They're just bananas. So starring Winnie, opposite Winnie is Callum Lieberman, and Callum is a former boy band star from the early aughts. He was in a boy band trio called Inc. And he was sort of like the funny one. He was like the Joey Fatone, if you will. And now in his 30s, Callum is the proud owner of a dad bod with a little bit of a tummy. And he's not quite as, living the most glamorous life as he used to, but he's still loving life as a Midwest pizza chain mogul. And his local pizza chain is called Slice Slice Baby, which we're incredibly proud of the name Slice Slice Baby. And so Callum has this thing where he has found himself to be the one before the one, is what he calls himself. So he often finds himself at friends' weddings and hooking up with bridesmaids. And then soon after he hooks up the bridesmaid always tends to find the one. And so Callum is sort of like a little bit of a lucky charm in the world of bridesmaids locally. And so he accidentally possibly has a sort of steamy home video sex tape get leaked and go a little bit viral. And so he's found himself back in the public eye for the first time in a very long time. And people are liking what they're seeing, like Callum has aged like fine wine and he knows what he's doing. And so rather than this turning into like a total moment of embarrassment, Callum also receives the opportunity to star alongside Winnie Baker in this steamy Christmas movie. And so this is his like comeback moment, and this moment for him to sort of define himself in the public eye after, going through like this boy band, machine essentially. And so Callum jumps on the opportunity, especially because he, growing up, had the biggest crush on Winnie Baker and can only think of the time that he regretfully embarrassed himself by dropping, you have to make sure I get this right, Sierra, by dropping a Teen Choice Award surfboard on her foot. Is that right? Okay. It's been a minute since we've drafted this book. So anyhow, he jumps at this opportunity, and when he gets on set, like Sierra said, he finds that Winnie is having a really hard time adapting to this spicier film. And he, as the patron of the arts that he is, decides, I will volunteer myself to show Winnie Baker what it's like to have a good time under the sheets. And I will do this off camera so that our on-camera performance can be authentic and poignant and layered and realistic. And Winnie is, out to reinvent herself and out to learn a lot about herself. So she says yes. And Winnie and Callum get a lot of good practice in, and the practice turns out to be a little too good. And they have, a hard time letting go of their little practice sessions. And so that's where Holly Jolly Ever After, not where it picks up, but where we find Winnie and Callum and their little love affair. What am I missing? I'm missing something, Sierra.
You are not missing anything.
Mm.
And I mean, maybe jokes that are a little too saucy to make before dark, but we were really excited to jump into this story because we had created this small town of Christmas Notch for our first book, A Merry Little Meet Cute. And Christmas Notch is an imaginary town in Vermont where it is Christmas 365 days of the year, 24 hours a day. And this Forever Christmas town is kind of a destination for legal reasons, it's not Hallmark, Schmalmark, to film their movie. In our series, we call it the Hope Channel. The Hope Channel comes, they film movies in this town. And we love small towns, but we really wanted to build the small town of our hearts, which is wildly inclusive, a fat positive, queer positive, just welcoming small town for everyone. And so we really intentionally built this world, but we also built it as a world where incredibly unhinged things can happen at the drop of a hat. And so we really love being in the setting where we can have these sort of really zany, carnal Christmas capers happening. For example, one of my favorite parts of this small town is a small little gentleman's club that is also Christmas themed, called the North
Gentle
Pole.
People's Club.
Yeah, a gentle people's club called the North Pole. And at the North Pole, all the dancers are named after the reindeer. So there's Vixen and, Prancer. And they are sort of the guardian angels of Christmas Notch, if you will. They come in and provide wisdom and solace when needed. And so we just love this world so much, and this sort of half feral crew of banana pants people that we have populated this world with. And so we were really excited to return.
Yeah, we basically were like, hey, let's write a book and pretend no one's ever going to read it and have the most fun with it we possibly could. And then it turns out people are going to read it. So, oops. But that's Christmas Notch, and that's A Holly Jolly Ever After.
Thank you. Oh, so exciting. Thank you, everybody.
Wow, this is a lot. This is like, talk about Christmas. This is Christmas. So why don't we thank you both so much? Why don't we bring everybody on now that we've gotten a taste of all of the books, and then we can go to some questions and we can open this up to discussion. Folks, this is your time to ask any questions that you want, either on Facebook or Crowdcast. And I think maybe let's see, maybe we should get to the questions first, but one of the things that we do want to make sure that we get in, and we can work this in any way you want, is the idea of co-authoring. I mean, this is a unique thing that we've done here, pull together these wonderful books that have great stories, but also are co-written. So maybe we do dive in on that right now, and maybe we could quickly go around. And hats off to Lainey for coming up with this idea. It's a great one, and I just think it's different and it's fun, aside from these great reads. So, Lainey, do you want to take a team and talk about the process, and then we can get to some questions?
Yeah, we'll talk about Christmas. It's just a gift to myself. I just want to know all these things. So I was like, why don't we do an event so I can hear all the answers? We actually have a question that I think might kind of do well to start this. And so I'll read it, and then, it's what we've already said, but it says, have the authors written together before, or is this their first joint effort? If the first time, how has the writing experience been different? So I'm going to go with, I think, Julie and Sierra first.
Yeah, so Sierra and I have been best friends since 2014. Am I getting the year right?
Yes,
okay.
you are.
Yeah, okay. So we've been best friends since 2014, and Sierra used to be a young adult author back in the day under a different name. And so that's how we originally met. And she started diving into the world of adult romance and also started feeding me adult romance books, and I became very obsessed and very into it. And it was always like this idea of like, one day it would be nice if I could try my hand at that. But also that's really terrifying because I write kids books and this is a lot of sex. But I think that we had always had it like in the cards for us to eventually write something together one day. The biggest thing was that we weren't interested in jeopardizing our friendship in any way. And we wanted to make sure that the right idea would come along because she writes truly unhinged taboo romance. And so we had to find something that would allow us to meet, like, you know, between unhinged taboo romance and me writing deeply awkward high school experiences, like somewhere in that middle ground. And one night we were on a writing retreat. You should tell them a little bit about our writing retreats.
Oh, yeah. So since we've been writing friends for so long, we have realized that we are not like other authors and that we are allergic to the sun and we only like to write at night, like vampires. And so we started going on writing retreats with other authors where everyone would wake up at like 5 a.m, go on a walk, rescue a kitten, and then they would write like 6,000 words before lunch. And I was like, wow, that's so great. What's it like to have executive function? And so Julie and I were like, what if we had a vampire writing retreat where we stayed up till 4 a.m, wrote a bunch of words, woke up at 1 p.m, ate some lunch meat out of a bag, and then started working again. And Julie was like, yeah, I'm in. So we started having these just vampire only writing retreats, just the two of us. And we, just the way our schedules worked out, it was always around Christmas. And so the other thing that is happenstance is that between the state of Texas, which is a state where Julie lives in, and the state of Kansas, there is another state. It's called Oklahoma. And Oklahoma is useful for some things. And one of those things is cheap rental cabins. And so we would go rent one of these cheap cabins, and it would always end up being in December. And so the cabins would be decked out with Christmas stuff. And we would reward ourselves at the end of the night if we had written all of our words with bad Christmas movies and pie, but like good bad Christmas movies, you know what I mean? And so we eventually one night, just like drunk on pie, were like, man, these movies are not so different than like the other movies, you know, that you watch alone at night. And that sort of was the genesis of the Christmas Notch world.
Yeah. And so this is our second book together, and we have found a really good rhythm with writing like dual point of view, though we have written some like novellas and bonus scenes with one point of view, and it works out because we finish each other's sentences a lot anyways. So, you know, we're happy. Happily married.
Nice. Okay, I'm gonna hand it to Kate and Janie.
Well, for us, I mean, I've done some co-authoring before this, but it's always been either doing something small. Like I've done co-authored novellas with Marie Benedict and with my friend Stephanie Dre. Have done like short stories or novellas. And I've done some co-authored stuff, which is larger teams where it's, you know, like a team of 6 or 7 authors total. And in that case, it's a little bit more, I mean, it was still a novel and we were still interweaving, but it was much more, you had your section and you wrote it and you made sure that it fit into everything else. So this was the first time I have done a strictly co-authored just with one other author experience. And I was a little nervous proposing the idea because ended up thinking, I have seen, and we have all, I'm sure, heard the carnage that happens when 2 writers write a book and then the result, whether the book comes out or not, they're no longer friends by the end of it. And I was like, I don't want that to happen here. We need to have a book that we're proud of. We also still need to be on speaking terms. I'm not incinerating a friendship over a book. So we both walked into this kind of like, okay, we're not going to blow this up.
And I think that Kate and I had pretty good indications that we would be able to weather a lot of stuff because we met in 2017 on a 3-city book tour in Canada. And it was 2 of us and another author, Jennifer Robson, who also writes historical fiction. And we wanted to call it the Hysterical Fiction Tour, but our publicist wouldn't allow us. And what happened was it was all happening on the west coast of BC. So I said, oh, no problem. I'll do the driving. This is like my neck of the woods. Well, pretty much everything that could go wrong with a car went wrong. And three cities.
Everything that could go wrong, period, went wrong on that 3-city book tour. I mean, like, cars broke down, air conditioners didn't work, any plane connection was automatically missed, luggage was lost, tires came off, asteroids hit the earth, traffic was terrible.
Oh, and then Kate's finest moment, there was a truck on the highway ahead of us and it had jackknifes. So we were literally sitting in a parking lot on the highway, and Kate looks up and she goes, "Oh my God, the guy in the car ahead of us is sitting out of his sunroof and he's got a huge plumber's crack showing." So we were treated to this wonderful view for about an hour and a half, and there was a book
Watching
signing
the
to go
time
to.
on your event tick down, knowing you're going to be late. So all of this happened and we were all still friends by the end of it. So we thought, like, this is actually an excellent indication that we can write a book together. If you can survive a 3-day road trip with somebody when everything goes wrong and you're still friends by the end, this is a good sign. And so, plus the other thing we have going for us is that both of us, again, kind of like you guys who went before us, we are also night owls. Like, we do not wake up at the crack of dawn and get 6,000 words by breakfast. It does not happen. So that helps. And the other thing being is that Janie and I have an unshakable belief that anytime you hit a roadblock, this is nothing in your book. There is nothing a spreadsheet can't cure. So
Absolutely.
Google Docs, Google spreadsheets. We have everything with a spreadsheet.
We plotted it out chapter by chapter, alternating chapters. And it was actually, and just to make sure everything dovetailed so that the beginning of one chapter was going to be consistent with so the end of one chapter would dovetail properly with the beginning of the next one. And I have to say, I've never written so fast in my life, because I would be like, I got to get this done so Kate can work on her chapter. And by the way, I really want to see what she's written. So no pressure, Kate, but I want to know what happens next.
That is the fun part about working together, is that you can catch the enthusiasm from your writing partner much more, and you can like sort of fire each other up in that way that is harder to do by yourself. And the way Janie and I did it, and I know other authors do it in different ways. I mean, I know other writing teams that they co-write every page and they write over each other's stuff until literally they both had their hands on every single sentence. Janie and I basically just divvied up the chapters and the book so that she wrote everything that was from her heroine's viewpoint. I wrote everything that was from mine. It was alternating chapters. It worked really well that way. And so when I had like her heroine in my scene, I would then I'd rough in something that I thought she should say, and then I would put a note there saying, Janie, feel free to change this to any way that you think your character would say it, be more likely to say it. Or, I just put something in brackets. I put brackets in, and then I would put in there, Suling answers, and she just needs to get in this piece of information. And then Janie can write that for me later when she then sees it on Google Doc. But it really was kind of a feeling of like we were throwing chapters at each other, like over the fence. Like I would write one and throw it up there, and then she would read it, and then she would write hers and throw hers back to me. And it really was quite an amazing experience, and I am pleased to say it was an entirely amicable one, and we are still friends by the end of it. So that was goal number 1 in the writing of this book.
Right. And I'm going to say one more thing, which I think is really important, which is that both Kate and I have roughly the same work ethic, which is to say we are type A control freak workaholics. So there was never a feeling that one of us was slacking off.
Yeah, we're not up before 10 if we can help it, but we would rather die than let our writing partner down. So that's a very good attitude to bring into a partnership writing a book.
Sweet. Okay, Catherine and Christine.
Well, first of all, I am of the 5 a.m. club. Sometimes 3 a.m., sometimes 4 a.m. I take a lot of naps during the day. I go to bed early. And for me, that practice started when my daughter was young. 5 a.m. in the morning would just be like the only time that I had. I remember reading an article where Toni Morrison did that while her son was young. And I was like, I can get up at 5 a.m. And it was a struggle until it became a habit. So yes, I would get up extra early and write. Catherine get up kind of early too.
Yeah,
but I think
I'm a 5 a.m.er too.
So I think we went into it though, just like completely blind. We sold Rebecca Not Becky on spec. So I think that also made it just a little more challenging going in. And of course, neither of us knew how challenging that aspect of it would be, because again, we had the chapter outline, we knew our characters, right? But as we all know, these stories tend to take on a life of their own, right? So the outline essentially is like a very rough roadmap, and you may end up going in another direction at any given time. And so I wrote DeAndrea's chapters without much of Catherine's input in the beginning, right? We wanted to really flesh out what we thought our characters were saying, doing, and keep it as honest and authentic as possible. That created some challenges early on in the process. Because of my background in African and African American history, there were some parts that I really wanted to weave in that were definitely, in retrospect, more for literary fiction or more for nonfiction. It would have been just too heavy for Becky, but I was like, no, we could, people were like, what? Right. And so we had to really come to, I think, to many consensus, I think, with our characters and the stories that we wanted them to tell, the best way to tell them, right? Because it doesn't mean that information that I wanted to share isn't still in there. It just meant talking through an approach that was more aligned with the direction that we wanted to take for the novel. And I think, like everyone else here as well, our friendship was first and foremost. And we're fortunate enough to be friends with Jason Reynolds and Brendan Kiley, who wrote All American Boys, and really had a chance to touch base with them and just say like, okay, how can we do this? Y'all are still friends. How can we still be friends? And, really just getting some good advice, because I do think it is a little more challenging when you weave in the complexities of something like race, right? Like, it's all fun and games when we're talking about motherhood and kids and, the touch points, the parts where we would have to challenge each other and push back came around these conversations about race and how we wanted to depict our characters and what we wanted readers to take away from a specific scene. That's when all the jokes fell off for both of us. And we were like, yo, like, what do you want to do with the scene? And how, and so Catherine, I'll let you jump in, but I'll say this lastly before you jump in. There were moments when it was really, really hard for me because I felt a very weighted responsibility with DeAndrea's story. And I just ended up, the process in retrospect ended up being so helpful and useful for me, just in terms of having these conversations in general. And so I can appreciate it now, but it's tough. It's your word. You're like, I'll delete those 500 words, girl. I'll look for those words. We're gonna have to figure out a way to make them work. But yeah, it ended up being a beautiful, beautiful process and ended in a beautiful book. So Catherine, I'll let you jump in.
Yeah, the only other thing I would add is the dual perspective was really important for us to really write those chapters separately, to have very distinct voices, because that is what our experience has been in the world with these issues, that the same thing will happen, right? In the instance of this book, there is a Confederate statue that the town is fighting over whether or not it should come down. And everyone's at the same events that are talking about it, the town council meetings, and reading the same articles and watching the same news reports. And yet we can all have such varied subjective experiences with what's happening. And that was really important to us, that you can very much feel as if these women are living parallel lives at times, even when we're talking about the conversations they're having together. And that would come up when we would come together to write dialogue with one another. And that would she wouldn't say it like that. And then
Yeah.
Christine would say, well, DeAndre, that's how DeAndre's going to hear her say it like that. I'm like, but you're saying it that way, you know? And so we would have these like conversations in real time that felt very, I mean, it was very authentic. This is what happens, and this is what we're trying to shine a light on. And also, while we take the issues really seriously around what the women are dealing with and grappling with and talking about with this backdrop of racism, always there. But we also didn't want these women to take themselves too seriously, so that we can actually, which we think is the key to being able to actually make change.
Yeah. And I mean, the conversations were honest because, you know, these are conversations that we have with our friends, right? Like even some of the more challenging conversations. And so I think, you know, once there was a layer of fear there, and I think like once that got pushed away, it allowed us to be just like super, super honest, right? Like this is what DeAndrea says when she's with her girlfriend. This is what it looks like when she code switches and ends up on the playground at this white school, right? This is what she's thinking in her head. And I think, you know, and we know this is in the work that we do, like you do end up laughing about some of the stuff, like some of the stuff that people say, some of the stuff that people ask, some of the stuff that people think, right? And we like to encourage that because that is part of the conversation, right? Like we have to remove the shame and stigma from asking questions because, oh, am I gonna sound stupid? Am I gonna sound, you know, racist? Is it, you know, we'll be like, yeah, that's funny. That's a funny question. And here's why, right? Like we have to be able to engage in this way. And so that's what we had our characters do. And some of the stuff is funny. You know, like DeAndrea saying, oh, the hawk is out. You know, we use like a lot of language and terms that we had some beta readers that were like, I have to go look that up. That's what we want, right?
I had to look that up.
Urban Dictionary did it right for you. But yeah, you know, like, so using the language that I would use with my friends, you know, texting the way that I text my friends. And I think to Catherine's point, showing how people who are literally in the same community, sharing the same experiences, are having two totally different experiences and conversations about it. And what does that look like?
I think that in Rebecca, Not Becky, that every chapter, the chapters alternate between the two characters, just back and forth and back and forth, and it's like it's very interesting. Everything that you're saying just rings just so true about, you know, being honest and how and how they are how Deandra is different with her friends, and I love her friends because they are just laying it out there, you know, they're so funny. And I just loved how it was presented. The other one is trying so hard and not reading the book for the book club. It's like maniac. She's with her organizer.
I'm
You have
laughing.
to appreciate it. It's really something. I mean, she's well intentioned, I suppose, but it's like, oh, get the train back on the track. But
Virginia, sorry, can I jump in really quick? Hearing you say that, it makes me think when Catherine and I did the cover reveal, one of our favorite comments, and we had several favorite comments, but our favorite one was this white woman named Rebecca who said, I have to read this book. I'm that Becky. And we were like, yes, right? You know, because the goal is we do want people to see themselves. And I know that Black readers, you know, if I weren't authentic in that language and in those conversations,
totally.
they would see right through it. And that's not what I wanted to do, you know?
Yeah, it's just wonderful. I think the very interesting thing among all of you is that what you all said was you wanted to protect your friendships, that was first and foremost, and you're all nodding yes. And I think that's so lovely that trumps, I didn't mean to say Trump, but that takes over everything. So a beautiful sentiment shared by all. We
Someone
have,
asked a question that might kind of go off that. They said, what did you learn about yourself? And what did you learn about your writing partner? And I think
oh,
that's
it's a good question.
Ooh.
I
you
think
can.
I think it's something where whenever you collaborate, that's when it's kind of like learning, like when you first live with a roommate for the first time, whether that's college or whether it's, you're sharing a rental or something, because we all like to think we're easygoing. And like that first time you live with somebody, whether it's the boyfriend or the college roommate or the rental partner or whatever, you like then might ask like, oh, like how are you to live with, or any particular things you like, and you're like, oh no, I'm easygoing. But then you realized I can't stand the way somebody like leaves toast crumbs on the counter, or you suddenly learn a lot of things about yourself very quickly when you have to share space. And I think creatively that is exactly the same when you co-author, because you learn where are the places that you're sensitive, what are the work things that you really set store by. And that's why I think it is so important. And the thing that I really learned about collaboration is that you have to approach it with a tremendous sense of respect. Like I always make sure, and I've always made sure, like with every time to collaborate with anyone, it's like, you never know how someone's going to take what you're saying when you're talking about their words. And because it is very much a thing of like, to collaborate it's a tremendous act of trust, because when you're trusting someone else with your words and your rough draft words, it's like, I'd rather be seen in my underwear any day, or caught naked any day, than like have somebody see my absolute rough draft, which is terrible. And yet you're trusting someone with it. It's like I'm putting that on a Google Doc drive for someone to read, even before I've had a chance to run a spell check on it. That is a tremendous act of trust. So you have to, I think you learn to be cautious and be kind in the way that you step around when you read someone else's work, and the way that you suggest changes. And that's an attitude to go in with. And of course, you'll find your rhythm with a partner. So after a while, you'll know, it's like, that's the wonderful thing about creating that rhythm, is after a while, you can just throw a comment bubble up that says, bitch, please, I know you can do better than this. And they won't be offended, because you've now worked this out. But it is something where you learn very quickly what are your own tender points and how to approach it so that you don't end up inadvertently stamping all over somebody else's tender points. At least that's what I took from it. And not just from me, but from every collaboration I've done.
Kate, I'm
Well,
curious too.
yeah.
Oh, sorry, I was just going to say, I'm really curious. Have you found, because this is something that happened for Catherine and I, like you're so clinging to the words until the book is like, so you get like first rough draft out, right? And then it's so much easier to let the words go to tell the best story, right? So there were like sections, paragraphs where I was like, I ain't never deleting that. I mean, I know they don't like it. I mean, the editor could say she can, I'd be like, okay, and then sort of like, I would say even that first pass, there was some cutting. And by that, we were just like, yeah, we don't need that. We don't need that. We don't need that. Right. So have you found that like sometimes did you and Janie go through that where it's a little bit easier to let the words go when that removing them is going to tell the best story, but you kind of can't see that until the end. You know what I mean?
I would say that one of the reasons why the editing notes that came back to us were so, they didn't want us to rewrite a lot of stuff. And I think it's because we were editing in our heads for each other before we uploaded to Google Docs. As Kate says, in my underwear, do I want them, to Kate to see this? So it wasn't like a first draft. It was more like second and a half drafts that were going up and working at a tremendous pace. So that was one of the things I learned, was I can write faster than I thought I could when you're under pressure. The other thing is that one of my big concerns was that Kate is a much more productive writer than I am, and I didn't know if I would be able to keep pace with her, but that, tossing the chapters up and back and forth to each other, that was very, very inspiring. The other thing was, I didn't know if I could write action-packed scenes because my novels tend to be a little bit slower, and Kate is like thriller paced action sometimes, right? And so, but all we needed was a good earthquake.
Christine, I do think that what you said, yes, is that I have one thing I think you learn as well is you have to lose the sense of being too precious with your own words. I think you're going to lose that much faster when you collaborate, because it's easier when you're working with someone else, for them to maybe gently explain to you, and sometimes you have to be the one gently explaining to them, look, I know you went down the hole on the Exclusionary Act of 1883, and I know you had 17 research tabs open, and I know you read the whole college thesis about it, but we really could get that down to like 2 lines, and that'll take so much out of this chapter. It's a lot easier to hear that maybe from a writing partner than to, or to have you realize it yourself in the course of, with a writing partner, you lose a little bit of that preciousness about, but I researched this is good stuff, this is important, damn it, I wasted 5 hours figuring this out.
That was me, man, that was me. Catherine, you did such a good job, I will have to say.
Yeah, I do think you have to lose that.
I had to lose it, Kate. I was holding on to words and scenes and, just very much in love with this, character that I was creating. And sometimes, we have to get that out to get to know the character. But Catherine, it got to a point where I always knew when she was about to ask me to cut something, because she would say,
I'm going to jump in real quick because we've got questions. We've got
anyway, Catherine, you did great. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. On Facebook, we have a question from Donna Wilder. What quality, this is for everybody, and I guess we'll start with Sierra and Julie, and then we'll go around. What quality do you find is the most important in bonding your characters in their unique friendships? So, Sarah, do you want to grab that one first, and then we've got more questions, so we'll keep it going.
Yeah, I really think that what has to happen is a balance between writing outside, like writing the connection inside the text, right? Like you are using the text as a conversation with your co-author, and your co-author is using that as like a prompt, right? To like improv off of, but then to have external communication about what's happening. So Julie and I FaceTime each other every day to make sure that we're really on the same page about what our characters are connecting over, what their, sort of shared wounds are, and how they can intersect. Like in the case of A Holly Jolly Ever After, we have a character who's coming out of evangelical Christianity, and we have a Jewish character, and their experiences of religion are wildly different, and the needs that they have carried out of those contexts are different, but in the same way they match, they intersect. Winnie and Callum are able to give each other the gift of kind of seeing different things about religious experience and kind of sharing that together. But that came out of Julie and I having conversations about Christianity and Judaism, and Julie's experiences and my experiences. And so I don't think like the text conversation was necessary, but like we wouldn't have been able to, I think, to get to that really wonderful connection without us, kind of dialoguing about it ad nauseum.
She's so smart and funny and pretty. And I was just going to be like, it's the sex scenes, baby.
I mean, those two.
Anybody else?
I mean, I'll say that one of the things that I think helped for the relationship and the friendship with our characters is when we really wanted to make sure we got to a place where each of the women sort of like in spite of themselves were able to find connection with one another. So when Rebecca could get out of her head like all these things she was supposed to be and what she was supposed to be doing, she's obsessed with perfection. And then it really became about how do I actually show up for the people in my life? And the same with DeAndrea, who, you know, in spite of herself, she starts to actually find connection and starts to form some roots, and meeting other people in the community, even though everything inside of her was saying don't, right? Like Atlanta's better, my friends are there, all of that. But then ultimately we're thrown together in community and we have to show up for each other. And that's really what happened with these women.
Mm.
For me, what was kind of unexpected, but really, really nice was the way that both Kate and I were willing to were able to do some research together. We went to San Francisco together on another trip where I also drove, and I will never drive with Kate again because she's convinced that I cannot navigate to save my life. And that is true, even with a GPS. But, you know, we did things like we went to these mansions and got the sort of like the backstage tour. And we were just like talking about this is something we could use in such and such a scene. This is something we could use in such and such a scene. We're both opera fans, so we didn't have any problems gelling on our opera singer character. And then my character got a real boost in terms of career when Kate and I went to the Legion of Honor Museum, which was showing the Guo Pei. I don't know if you've known her. She's a Chinese like embroidery maestro with the most incredible outfits. And we went to see that and immediately thought this is something that we could work into the novel. So I just really loved how we were able to take those external experiences and have them inspire things that happen inside the story.
Nothing is wasted, I'm convinced. Even if it doesn't make it into the book, there will be something that feeds the partnership that will still creatively make the entire experience better, regardless of what ends up on the page.
And I don't have anything to add. I want to try and get through some of the other questions for folks.
Okay. Lainey, I think you've got a couple on Crowdcast, yeah?
Yeah, let's see. This one says for Holly Jolly, where you have a heroine traveling from wholesome to torchy, which I really like. How did you pitch the book in terms of target audience?
Julie, you should.
I have to be annoying and say I didn't hear the question.
That's okay. Thank you for saying that. Some people are like, yeah, sure, I'll just go on. But I
No.
appreciate that. So no, it's all good. For Holly Jolly, where you have a heroine traveling from wholesome to torchy, how did you pitch the book in terms of a target audience?
You know, I have to be really annoying and say, I don't think that we had a target audience in mind. I think we were really thinking of ourselves when we wrote this book, very selfishly. Sierra and I both came out of purity culture. As someone who is like Jewish and from Connecticut and then moved to Texas as a young person and was like thrown into like this really bizarre different type of culture here. It was kind of a shock. And then Sierra growing up in Kansas, and so we sort of really had to like uncover some like long held wounds that we never realized. And it's something that like in meeting like other millennial women our age, it's something that we're all sort of really conscientious of, even if we didn't grow up in that specific culture. I mean, we can all remember like the incredible like debate over like whether or not Britney Spears was a virgin and why was that ever anyone's business to begin with. And just like the discussions around like Jessica Simpson and her being a virgin until she got married, and like all these different things. And so, yeah, I think that, like I said earlier, selfishly, we always write these books for ourselves first. And we find that there's often a lot of other people out there who are in the same boat and looking for the same sort of stories that we're writing. I hope, at least. What did I miss? Pretty smart person.
That's it. And I do think that we're pretty careful to message this is still fully a spicy book. And so Julia's been really careful to message The Christmas Notch series is something different from her kid lit, to make sure that no wires are being crossed, especially right now in a time of book banning and book challenges, because a lot of Julie's backlist is queer. Julie has faced a lot of book challenges and book bans. And so we want to be very careful not to give any book banners sort of ammunition, right? That like Julie is single-handedly destroying the culture by writing spicy books. And so we are usually pretty careful to be like, this is an adult book for adults.
Yeah, that's very true. And we also want to be clear that like, even though we take on a lot of really serious and heavy topics, like these books are funny. Like there's still something incredibly funny about being 19 years old and believing that you can't get pregnant as long as it's in a hot tub. Like that's awful and scary and bad, but it's also pretty funny. So,
Thank you.
Yeah.
I know we're running out of time. I have a couple of comments that I want to read. So they said, Kim said you make writing retreats sound glamorous. Sign them up. They're all ready to sign up for a writing retreat. And then I also love that she said, it sounds like all of you would write together again if the opportunity presented itself. How wonderful. I thought that was very sweet. So it comes through in all of the things you're saying, how much respect you hold for each other, but also how much fun you have together when you write.
Yeah, there's great admiration here. I love this conversation that is really about. I love the crosstalk. I love you're all sort of answering these really neat questions on how you navigate co-authoring a book. Back to the content of one of the books. This is for Christine and Catherine. This is from Sylvia Buonanni. I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly. Something tells me I'm not. She says, with reference to the 5-year-old, Nina, I'm assuming, I'm curious if there are similar quote unquote child scenes concerning race. If so, how does one research that character?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really good question. And I think one of the reasons why Catherine and I felt very comfortable writing the scenes and conversations is, number one, I'm a mother. I know what it was like to mother a little Black girl, and the challenges and, having the talk and like all of those things, like, I know that firsthand. And then also in the work that I do, I did a lot of trainings for the Anti-Defamation League's No Place for Hate in Schools program. And so, just having, again, just those firsthand knowledge of those conversations and things that are said and things that cause schools to be in an uproar, things that cause parents to be upset. But I think one of the things that I also love about the scenes with the children is that they are so less concerned about race than their parents are. And I have just found this to be true over and over and over again. It's not that they're not aware. It's not that, all of the conversations that we drill into them, that they don't hear them. It's not that they're not, fully present in terms of what is going on in the world, but it is so less of a concern for them than it is for adults. And so we also wanted to show that. And I don't want to give away too much of the book, but there is a scene where we really tried to hone in on that, where the kids had a wonderful time with a particular activity, and it blew up the parents' listserv. You know what I mean? Like, these are the things that happen. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah.
And
I'll
experience.
I'll add too that what really drove it in the book is the children's curiosity, which is what our experience has been with our own kids. That kids ask questions and they don't have the weight and the baggage around it that so many adults start to. And so the questions come out freely and sometimes ineloquently. And so Rebecca is actually, and her daughters, she has a 5-year-old and a 10-year-old daughter in the book, and it's their questions and their commentary and the reason that she sees that she needs to take it up a notch with her own anti-racist practice and her work is because she's realizing that her children, who she thought she was doing all the right things, getting all the right books and all the things, were actually implicitly starting to create a frame on the world and a view and a perspective that that's not what Rebecca had intended, but because she hadn't explicitly addressed some of the things about where they live, what's around them, who was coming into their home, that their children were making certain assumptions. And that's very much something that we've seen over and over again in our work and in our lives.
Thank you. The innocence of the kids. It's like they just want to play together.
I have a good time.
Yeah, right. Also, Nicole Williams says, I love LL Cool J the dog. So
Well,
funny.
Nicole you have an arc. Yeah, man. I had a lot of fun with that character. LL is that's my boy.
I love LL Cool J had his own nameplate at the dinner.
He had to.
Oh
Family.
God. Okay. So Lainey, we have so many people writing in, just with so much love, so many comments. I feel a lot of people had questions about the writing process. I feel like all of those questions together have been answered among the six of you. Jennifer Winberry was asking, did you trade chapters back and forth? We sort of, we talked about that. And people are just very excited to read the books. Several people have read the books. All the books are available here for download. I think we've gotten them all. Lainey, are there any that we've missed that you see?
I don't think so. I think we pretty much covered it. They asked some things that kind of overlapped, but I think we're good. Lots of great comments. You can go back and see them later, but
yeah, I think we've got it. I mean, I think you viewers can walk away knowing that these are three really different and equally wonderful reads. And I hope you're all intrigued to go and download them and read them and then share with us your thoughts, because that's what this is all about. Before we wrap this up, is there anything that anybody wants to say that they haven't said? Feel free. We said we would go a little bit after 8, and we're a little bit after 8, but if there's anything anyone wants to say, feel free. This is your time. Can
I say one last thing about the book? This is something that I think it hit me when Christine and I just turned in the last pass with our pages last week. So the book is very fresh. We read it just a few days ago. And one of the things that I really think I like about the book is that there are so many layers to it. So I hope that readers come away with that too, that if you want to sort of stay maybe a little bit more surface, then there's a lot of humor and fun things to look at and think about with the friends relationships, just even things like terminology that we use and stereotypes and things like that. And then if you want to go another layer deeper, you can start to look at marriage dynamics and how these women are navigating their friendships and their obligations and their responsibilities. And it's not ignoring race at all. But we really want to not make that not part of the story, but it's also not all of the story. And thinking about, at least with Rebecca's character, there is something so problematic about every single man in her life, and she's faced with a choice about how she's going to stand up to them and be sort of aligned with them. And then if you want to go even deeper than that, you can think about just the very existence of this town in Virginia, and what that means for kind of the state of equity and belonging and justice in our country. And so I think there's an invitation at each layer for people to really dig in. And that's something that I think hit me more explicitly when we read it again last week.
Yes. And maybe that's also, well, first of all, you said that so beautifully, Catherine. I feel like that sums up everything about Rebecca, Not Becky. I wanted to just say, I know we had some folks that had questions about the process. And so Catherine said we read last pass. We actually had Adobe read it to us. which I highly recommend, because we heard all sorts of things. We did not know were in the manuscript. So for those writers out there who are, curious about like sort of what the tail end of the process might look like, because for a while we would read aloud, right? We would read each other's chapters aloud to each other as we were reading through the manuscript. But we'd read it so many times, we just knew we would miss something, right? And there's nothing like hearing your book in a monotone, emotionless voice to let you know what you really wrote. So wanted to share that.
See, I don't think I'm brave enough to do that. I think I'd just be like sitting there in a cringe with my shoulders up around my ears, thinking, yeah, that's a lot worse than I thought it was when I wrote it.
It was something. It was something, but it did. It allowed us to hear every single thing without me evoking the emotion that I would normally put into that particular scene, right? And I also think it allowed us to, hear some things we were like, oh, we could tighten that a little bit, right? In addition to testing words and, things like that. So anyway, that is like my new little word of advice for folks who are at the tail end of their project, where you literally cannot look at the page again, let alone read it aloud. Have a system read it aloud for you, and you'll really hear what you wrote.
Good advice.
I would just quickly add that this isn't about our process or anything juicy or fun like that, but we are going to be on the road quite a bit this fall, doing a lot of events. So if you want to come see us, you can find out more information at julieandsierra.com/events. And our events have once been described as a feral slumber party. So if that is your vibe, come hang out with us.
Yes. And I would say that I feel like I'm just going to shamelessly steal Barbie's marketing, but I feel like the Christmas Notch books, if you hate cheesy Christmas movies, this book is for you. If you love cheesy Christmas movies, these books are for you. If you ever wanted a Hallmark movie to just get like super physical, but you still wanted all the shameless fun of Christmas movies, and you wanted to see it be inclusive in terms of body type and queerness and all of that stuff, like we wrote these series to sort of reclaim what is hilarious and awesome about those kinds of movies, but then hopefully kind of reappropriate it and make it for everyone. So yeah.
Janie and I are going to be on the road as well in February. We don't know where yet, but we know we're going to be in Canada as well as in the US. So yeah, we will both be posting about it. So follow us on our social media. We'll be making sure we get that out there when we know.
Who's gonna drive?
Not me. Oh,
If HarperCollins is smart, they will just fly. They'll just, make sure we have planes. And then that way, the Jinx can follow us around, the travel Jinx. But there will not be either of us required to read a map, and that would be really excellent for all concerned. And I would say too, I would like to point out that, like, I wondered, did anybody else have this idea when you were first tossing around the idea of writing a book together, you guys? Did you do the thing that Janie and I did, which was a large part of tossing back and forth that first idea is, hey, do you think if we write a book together, then we can just get our publisher to pay to send us on events, and it'll be like getting a girl trip, but we can write it off for work purposes? And we thought that was a great idea. Did anybody else think that was like a major motivator for, for co-authoring? Would be hopefully that like somebody else would then send you on the road together to have fun, and that sounded like a great way to get a girls trip.
Oh no, Kate, you just blew it. You just said that in front of people who work for our publisher, and now they know. But we weren't out for
I'm not telling anyone.
I think they do anyway.
Yeah, I'm like,
We
no,
won't-
we
we won't say
just
anything.
wanted to write a book. That's
Yeah.
all.
Oh, you're the purists. We're then totally just wanted to travel.
No,
we're
our
just-
editor is on here, so I'm not saying anything.
All right, my lips are sealed. Get that trip. You
There
wrote
you
a
go.
great book. We're so happy to have that. Get that trip.
Lainey and I won't
And-
tell anyone as long as you let us come with you.
And
I'll drive.
Catherine and I will be on the road as well. So I'll close out my little piece with that. We'll be on the road. Rebecca Not Becky comes out December 5th. And so we'll have a few little things in December and then really ramp it up at the top of the year. So please come see us, be in conversation with us. We are so excited to see what Rebecca Not Becky is going to do.
Well, we're excited to see what everybody's books will do. They will educate, entertain, illuminate. These are really wonderful books. We will repost this with any social
I
media.
put your websites in the chat so everybody can find
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah. So again, our thanks to Janie Chang and Kate Quinn, authors of The Phoenix Crown, which goes on sale February 13th. Catherine Wigginton Greene and Christine Platt, authors of Rebecca Not Becky, which goes on sale December 3rd. Julie Murphy and Sierra Simone, authors of A Holly Jolly Ever After, which goes on sale October 10th. So,
Ooh.
yeek, it's coming up.
I know. Oh,
Thank you. Lainey, great idea. This was so fun. This was so educational for all of us and thank you all for taking the time to talk to us about your books and your process. And yeah, thank you all for watching tonight. This was a terrific toe back in the water after taking the summer off. What a way to start it with quite the splash with all you wonderful authors. Thank you.
Thank you. I can't wait to
for
read
having us.
books too, to our
Yes.
co-authors
Yeah.
here. Yeah.
For sure.
thank you for having us.
Yes, thank
Thank
you.
you so much.
Take care,
Thank you.
everyone.
Bye.